People listening to music don't like change. That's why things that work stick. But they also really don't like complete monotony, hearing the same thing over and over again. That's why the music that gets played on the radio, most people don't actually really love. It's just the least offensive to the most people. Regardless of if your goal is commercial success in music, most people, I think it's fair to say, want an audience that values their music for what it is and the things that make them different from someone else that they might listen to. And whatever audience you're a part of, as in the artists and the genres that you listen to, I would imagine you choose to listen to that because it has something unique about it that makes you more interested in it than other things that you might listen to. This whole thing is the reason why we have a million subgenres and people like to fight about what counts as this or that, because people care way too much about the distinctions between it. But if you actually boil it down and look at it, it is true. People want something that's slightly different from what they've heard before, but not too different. It's not very insightful to say, like, to be different, do something different. Like, or to be successful, have something about you that is different to what else is available. But people don't think about it enough, I don't think. And that's why, and this includes me, when I was sort of first learning to make music or whatever, you get stuck feeling like you're copying things verbatim, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that is the only way to learn, really. You can't just start out with no knowledge creating unique things because you don't know how to create anything. You don't know how to work with the equipment and tools and whatever. But once you reach a point where you can make a decision in your head and know how to actually translate that into sound, it's actually not that hard to do unique things. There is a long history of my music being atypical, which to many people just means it's not very good, and that's fine. But regardless of the types of music you listen to and whether this is of interest, like whether you think this is good, it still illustrates, I think, a very important point, that do something different, but not too different. All that philosophical, analytical stuff doesn't really matter. It's just a good way to start the video, and all that's just to say, don't overthink it. Do what you want to do, but maybe something worth considering. Anyway, so the thing that these three different projects share is like the sampling method, I guess, which basically consists of orchestral or just melodic samples. Two of them are orchestral. This one's based on a vocal, but still. And then various effects, particularly time-based effects, so reverbs, delays, that sort of thing, and then reversing them, and then more effects. It's not really a very concrete formula. It's very, try out different things, and it's also not really that special. Like, everyone does this, but it is slightly more specific than just flipping samples, and there's something unique about that. This is how some of probably your favorite producers get weird, trippy, sort of unnatural sounding samples that sound almost eerily similar to real instruments or a human voice or whatever, because they're just, you do weird shit and you get these sorts of sounds. So the most obvious reason for that is time-based effects like delays and reverbs obviously they were created to imitate what happens in a space, like, a big open space, sound reverberates. They were created to imitate that. If you apply those effects and then reverse it, it sounds like something you're familiar with, but in the wrong way. It's a very, non-analytical way to look at it, but that's what it is. That's enough theory for the day. Let's look at this sample. So, this first one, I think, is the best and the worst depending on what's important. Sonically, I think this is probably the coolest sounding sample out of the three, but I made a really bad decision when working on it, and you'll see that. So here's the sample on its own. It's only really 2 bars long. I think the vocal bit of this is really cool. It's obviously chopped up a lot. There is a reverse thing in there, which That's part of the mistake. And yeah, it's got quite a few effects before reversing it, and then it was reversed, and then a little bit more sort of more subtle reverb and things were applied as well. So there's a lot going on. The issue here is there are multiple issues, but they all boil down to the same thing: overcommitting. So when you use real samples, you're stuck with decisions that someone else has made in the past. Whether that's just you have one mix of multiple instruments, you're not going to be able to, even though we've got AI tools and all of that now, but theoretically, you're not going to be able to separate out the stems and mix it how you want and take out bits you want. Even to a less extreme version of that, if you've got a sample playing a certain melody, that's the melody you've got to sample, obviously, but it limits you. That's what I'm trying to say. And it is definitely true that the more limits you have, the more creative you have to be, and that leads you to making more interesting decisions, and that's how we get some of the best pieces of music. But a lot of people, myself included, don't want to pay $15.99 a month or whatever for a subscription service to get these samples, and we live in the real world where you can't just steal other people's music. So creating your own samples, either using plugins or real instruments, is a very good way to, without spending a lot of money, practice sampling and get better at it, and also actually create like real music to put out without having to spend a lot of money before you've gone anywhere with it, you know? So these 3 samples I've used, I created from scratch. That's what I'm trying to say. But there's no real reason to lock yourself into past decisions like what would happen with real samples. Like, there's no reason to do that artificially for yourself. Certainly as a challenge, and if your aim is only to practice the skills of isolating things out of a sample and that sort of stuff, 100%. But if you're just doing it to make cool samples and make music, it's just stupid. Like, all of this sample was created in this DAW in a different project, which is now gone. I could recreate it. It's obviously, like, this is obviously not my voice. I started with a sample that I didn't create and then chopped it up. Now, what I said before isn't completely true. The other 2 are completely made from scratch. They're orchestral and I use plugins. This one is not. This is just a heavily modified sample. So I probably should have started with a different one. But my point still stands. I chopped it up in a certain way, did some various effects on it, chopped it up again, added drums, which is why you can hear drums on this one track that's only the sample, and then reversed it again, which is why at one point the drums are reversed, and it's just a mess. And while certainly there are some really cool things about it, because I chose not to save the first project because I was like, oh, let's give myself some artificial limitations, now I'm actually stuck with something I would prefer to have a different way. If you're going to go down the route of making your own samples, or like, you know what I mean. Don't limit yourself on purpose in a way like this. It's unhelpful. As you can see, I didn't do much additional work on this because I just found it less inspiring because I was stuck with this one thing I didn't like. I realistically can just chop out the second half of the sample and just use this one bar, and then I can chop this up to create a very similar pattern to this, and it would be fine. But it's less inspiring now that I've locked myself into something I don't like, even though I've just described exactly how I could fix it, but I'm lazy. Anyway, here is the very, very briefly where I did go with it. All I did was add some additional drums, and it actually masks it a little bit, and I definitely think I could build something around this that's still really, like, that I'm happy with. But as you'll see, I chose to go much deeper on the other 2 because I didn't limit myself in that way, and I've found them much more inspiring to work on. With that first one, I kind of explained most of the like technical stuff about what you like, the mistake I made and what I wish I didn't do. So these next 2 will go by a little bit quicker. But here's another sample. It's quite simple. Same sort of thing. The really unique thing, and I mean unique, not as in different necessarily to other music, but just the thing that makes it sound like a cool sample, to me at least, is the reverb and then reverse in that order makes it sound unnatural. It's a simple formula, and it's the same as with the previous one. You get this like swelling stuff and whatever. This is obviously quite a lot more distorted, and the direction that I went with it, I'm not a massive fan of the 808s, but you can hear it there. It's not bad by any means, it's just a little bit, I don't know, needs a bit more work in my opinion. And also, yes, there is a mic track. No, it's not me, and no, I'm not going to play it. This is another example though where I might have chosen to go down a different route with the sample, and not used so much distortion or whatever, and now I'm locked into that. And again, it's a very like privileged way, not privileged, but like making your own samples obviously gives you more freedom than using real samples. So there is a sense of like you're not working as hard if you're giving yourself an easy way out, but also like if you made it from scratch, you've done the whole thing from scratch yourself. So like, I don't know. There is obviously some benefit to giving yourself challenges and learning things from it, but this is just unhelpful. Like, I think this is decent, but I could have created something that I think sounds slightly better by saving the old version of the project basically, and giving myself the freedom to retroactively change things. 100% make something cool, bounce it to a separate file and mess with it there, but keep the original one so you can change your mind. Which is just a very obvious point about saving your work, but like, yeah, I don't know. We'll move on to the last example. Once again, here is the sample. So yeah, this is the most like distorted internet music sort of one of them all, but it is like it's sort of gone in a pretty hip hop sort of direction. It does also include, so this one I made some better decisions. The different sample tracks are separated. So actually I need to mute this, but so those three samples are obviously distorted. This one and this one are reversed, but then because I kept them separate, I was able to retroactively make the decision to unreverse a portion of it and have the initial attack sound a little bit nicer and get this cool turnaround effect. Just that's one very specific example, but by keeping the stems separate, I was able to take it in a direction I wanted and make more decisions down the track rather than just be limited for no real reason by my own decisions. Anyway, the implementation and use of this sample is probably the most the furthest from typical hip hop out of the three. Like, it's very distorted, not hyper pop, but sort of like, I don't know. I don't listen to enough of this sort of music to have the right description for this, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, these are three examples of what I think is a really cool way to get just slightly different sounds out of your samples or your own, well, it's still sampling, but your own samples, I guess. It's not really all that insightful. All the philosophical stuff at the start was just to get people in the door, but it is still true. Like, be different in the right way, which is also a stupid thing to say, but like, it's true. Do what you want with this. I kind of just wanted to share a few things, but yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. See you next week.